same generator that the average person owns, and then you have a big generator. We provide electricity for ourselves. We have our own security man, the Megad. We're just about a species of Homo sapiens that do not expect too much from government. And so when I hear government ask the people to tighten their seatbelt, I think that's a bit unfair to the Nigerian people. I think that government must show the way. It was Mitt Romney, when he was running for presidency against Barack Obama, who said something that was very instructive. He said leadership must show the way. You know, very sadly, every so often you hear our leaders tell us about reforms, whereas leadership is not leading by examples. And I give you quick instances. It's about 18, 19 months of leadership under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and under his watch, what have we seen? We see a predilection, and I'm saying this without sounding partisan. We see a predilection to waste, wanderlust, and profligacy. And then they tell us that the government is interested in reforms. And you ask yourself, what are we really doing differently? Budgets come with almost more than half of the budget for servicing of debts, close to half of the budget for recurrent expenditure, and then repeated budgetary lines for billions going for entertainment in the villa, billions going for new housing and renovations, billions going for research. Very sadly, the appropriation bill that is before the National Assembly now, there's about 75 billion for research and development in the women ministry. And then you ask yourself, because you hear people say, oh, this government is taking tough decisions. And you ask yourself, what are the parameters? Show me those tough decisions. Because if you were essentially talking about a government showing leadership by calling, quote and unquote, those who allegedly were fleecing our resources in the name of fuel subsidy, if you're calling them to order and asking them to refund the monies for fuel allegedly imported that never came in, then I would say that you're taking tough decisions. If you're asking the ministries to repatriate funds that were not used in projects that they were marked for, I would say thumbs up for doing things differently.
So calling for subsidy removal is not a courageous decision, because there are those that many government tried, but they could not even make an attempt in removing subsidy. In
2012, along with Mr. President and those who are the minders of the presidency, we at Ojota addressed that rally about 3 times. At Ojota for almost 2 weeks, asking President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan not to remove subsidy. And our argument then was that subsidy was a scam. Now, if we held the argument that subsidy, along with Mr. President, in 2012, that subsidy was a scam, why is it plausible for you to remove subsidy now without investigating into the roots, into the full details of that scam? That's one. If you're willing to taking tough decisions, then what you must do and should do is to ask those who between 2002 and now who have been taking subsidy from government for importation of fuel to account and to show us their ledgers. That should be the first thing to do, rather than tell us that other governments before you failed to remove subsidy. And then, very importantly, you don't also tell me that floating the naira in an economy that is largely consumptive, far less productive, is an economic policy. It is not. And that's why Nigerians are hungry today. That's why there's poverty, disease, and despondency. That is why people have stampede in search for food. I think the government must think through these policies of it. Because let me give you an instance, and this is very important for our listeners. There are a few countries that have tried what we're doing today. In the 1940s, Japan and Germany tried it. and it got them into horrendous poverty, monstrous hunger. Between 1980 and 1990, Russia tried it, and it got them into greater poverty and hunger. And I'll give you a graphic instance. You cannot tell me that your reforms will yield results when your inflationary trend is over 34%. You cannot tell me that your reforms will yield results when there's hunger, disease, despondency, and want. You cannot tell me that your reforms will yield results when there's no energy to run businesses. The medium-scale businesses are going under, and several foreign multinational companies are leaving Nigeria and going to neighboring countries. I think that there must be a willingness to research, a willingness to interrogate, a willingness to do a patriotic appraisal and reappraisal of the policies of government. And I think that government must understand that some of us who are critical about the positions of government are friends of government, are lovers of Nigeria.
You want this country to work, Prof.
That's why I'm saying what I'm saying.
All right. So if government, on the other hand, said, how are we taking the decision? The way forward is that we must begin to look at how we can continue to amend some of these reforms to for instance, Dangote refinery is upstream.
Private business.
Port refinery, Warri refinery is what?
Is Warri refinery functional? Have you seen PMS or AGO from Warri refinery? Have you seen any?
There's a signal for its operations.
You know, I think it's more words and less action. And I should believe the government must begin to see critical position as patriotic. They must begin to see us as partners in progress. Because if you don't allow for critical opinion, if you don't allow for the voices of dissent, you perhaps may not and may never know where you're getting it wrong.
All right, I've just been sitting down for a very quick break, everyone, and once we return from the break, we'll continue with that conversation. Stay with us. Many thanks everyone for still staying with us on the program. I still have Professor Mustafa Wakobiaka, our country first movement, still alive here on the show to still address some of the development in the country. Professor, government said they have made a lot of projection for 2025. In a way of moving forward, well, we understand that 2024 was a very difficult year. A lot of our development, end bad governance protests, hunger protests, and all of those descriptions. But government, on the other hand, said we are aware of the challenges, we are aware of the pains, we are aware of where our decisions has taken Nigeria to. But give us 2025 that all of the reforms will start yielding results. In a way, he looks at the president, he understands what he's doing, he understands the decision he's taking, and he understands the reform. For many Nigerians, it looks that he's a man that is on top of the job.
Let me say this clearly. I wish I can be as optimistic as Mr. President. I wish the facts and figures point to that. I wish there were not more platitudes and promises than realistic and actualizable prognosis. I wish they were. But let me tell you, the reason we're very critical of the policies of this government is because we think that Mr. President truly wants to get Nigeria working, he can. We know him. Some of us were with him in the process of fighting the PDP. Some of us were with him in ensuring that Goodluck Ebele Jonathan did not remove fuel subsidy in 2012. And the fundamental argument that we held then was that more than 70% of the fuel subsidy regime was a scam. And so I truly believe that if Mr. President is sincere, the first thing he must do, perhaps before the removal of the subsidy, was to call all those who have been receiving monies in the name of subsidy to book. Let us see what they brought in and what monies they were paid. That's point number one. Then point number two, one of the fundamental things that we expected this presidency to do was to understand that following explicitly in details the Bretton Woods, ditto the World Bank and the IMF policies would not take us anywhere. Look at what it did to Argentina. Look at what at some point it has done to Venezuela and several other countries that have tried to follow through. Look at what it did in the 1980s and 1990s to Russia. I think that we must understand that the man who is willing and ever too ready to borrow you, lend you monies, will not want you to function effectively. India turned its back on the Bretton Woods organizations. South Africa is doing that today. If we want to move this country out of poverty to promise, out of despondency to plenty, out of want to abundance, we must interrogate the policies of government. And I'll give you a practical instance. You float your naira when you're a productive economy. The naira will find its level.
They said they couldn't continue to subsidize the naira for some few Nigerians who probably were making use of the foreign exchange.
You don't sacrifice the majority on the altar of the minority. That's what leadership is about. It was Reagan, whilst he was the president of a purely capitalist economy, that said that you regulate economies to benefit the masses of the people. Unfortunately, government took away subsidy from petroleum products, removed subsidy from electricity, and how do you want medium-scale and small-scale businesses to thrive? And now that poverty and hunger and despondency is on us, government is telling us they understand. But you know, in all sincerity, Mr. President has not been aloof in admitting that Nigerians are hungrier today than they were before now. The tragedy of our presidency is that it is the minders, the spokespersons, those who represent government that are very unfortunately trying to gaslight Nigerians and lie just about everything. I saw the spokesperson or the public secretary of the ruling party try to tell us that Nigeria is better now than it was in 2023. But let me tell you, very importantly, every so often I hear government say that workers are better paid today. Nothing can be more fallacious, nothing can be more mendacious and perfidious than that fact. Because you know what? 30,000 naira in 2023 is far more than 100,000, I'm not saying 70,000 today. And I ask you, you ask me why and how. In 2023, I could buy fuel for 167 naira per liter.
That was the subsidy.
Today, no, but that's why we must debunk the falsehoods that we hear. Because every time you hear people say, oh, Nigerians are getting more money now, the state governments are getting more money now, we must tell the minders of government that that's a huge lie. Considering the inflationary rate, it is by far less. We had about 14% inflation. Today we have about 34% inflation. And so when you put these realities in place, what we must do, all over the world, if you want leadership to be responsible and responsive, if you want leadership to take a country out of poverty, the first thing you do is tell the truth. Work by proper statistics. And when you tell the truth, you will understand that government must do far more now, because the actual value of the naira today compared to what it was 2 years ago, it's far less.
All right, Prof. If government says they will reduce inflation to 15% for this year with the new budget, I also have a concern that President said, I believe in a free market, where if you allowed everyone, willing buyer, willing sellers to be in the environment, in the market environment, somehow the prices can be determined by how some of these factors. He doesn't want people one-sided to be in control of the economy, jeopardizing the future of this country. Don't you feel that's economic philosophy of the president, maybe in line with what he's trying, the action he's taking?
Voodoo economics. Let me tell you why. Your currency can survive if you float it where the business parameter is more productive than consumptive. And then second point that you must know is the fact that ordinarily, if we were doing well in terms of food security and agriculture, if non-state actors were not taxing farmers to come harvest their produce without asking them to pay tax, if there was security for the farms and farmers, if produce had increased, then this dynamics would be simple and predictable. But as you and I talk, are you aware that the bag of rice is over 100,000? As you and I talk, do you know the price of a basket of tomato? As you and I talk, do you know the price of a basket of onion? And then when you put these realities together, if you decide to float the naira, it will suffer more. And then when it suffers more, the value of your currency will die, and inflation will grow more, and all these prognosis and promises about 2025 will be like a wait for Godot. So I think that is important. And this is my advice to government and Mr. President. And to those who have the ear of a presidency, you must re-evaluate the reforms. You must interrogate the reforms. And you must ensure, because I hear people say, oh, Nigeria is safer today than it was last year. And if you have followed the news for 2 weeks consistently, here it's gone, the security issue is going nuts. Nuns are being kidnapped. Priests are being kidnapped, in essence, for ransom.
It's better than the previous administration.
No, I don't think it is. Because you have the statistics. If you follow the statistics, Google, and you'll be shocked. We have had more kidnappings. We had more kidnappings in 2024 than we had in 2023. Facts and figures.
You're confronting these issues. You've seen defense really coming out to those approaches, like for instance, the rises of Alakoa. They are saying very soon all of that will be out.
Michael, interestingly, you see what you just said. The use of words, the rising of Lakoa. Was it Lakoa in 2023? Were they killing soldiers? Were they infiltrating Kepi, Katsina? They weren't. You know, I think that the Holy Book was very pathetic when it said, only truth can heal, only truth can save. And then it was one of my admirable, he was a great writer, a great philosopher, you know, Sir Walter Scott, who said a long time ago that, you know, when you try to lie, when you try to deceive, you have to do a lot more work, you know, than what we have today. And he said, oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. You know, oftentimes when you leave the facts and figures, nobody is expecting government to do magic in one day. But you know what? It is easier to tell the people the truth. It is easier to admit your shortcomings. It is easier to carry the people along when you tell them, okay, we understand that this is the present situation, we're doing this. Unlike what, practically, let me give you an instance. A learned colleague of mine, Felix Moka, the National Public Secretary of the All Progressive Congress, he said that farmers are happier today than they were before. That's the greatest lie of the 21st century.
That is the spokesman of the...
No, I'm ready to debate him anywhere and anytime. And then he went further. No, let me give you another instance. He talked about the balance sheet of government. And I remember that before the APC came into power, Nigeria had much more money. I campaigned against Jonathan without regrets. And that same reason was the reason when Buhari wasn't fulfilling the promises we made to the Nigerian people, I campaigned against Buhari consistently. And I will always do that until we have a leader who understands that patriotism should be the core denominator, not about partisanship. You know, I don't hate Bola Ahmed Tinubu. In fact, by tendency, I'm closer to Bola Ahmed Tinubu than any other politician around. But the fact is that Nigeria must come first, and that's why my movement is country first. When we analyze issues of state, we should be more interested in making the poor come out of poverty, in making the middle class come back alive, and in making the political class responsible and responsive to the people. These are the fundamental denominators and determinants of my politics.
I mean, when we look at the cabinet, those who are working with the president, because we've also understood the role he played in the Lagos today, some of the foundation he led in Lagos, which you also said you knew the president better. But in all of that, it speaks to the capacity of those who are taking this decision, who are advising the president, and some of these decisions he's making, the economic team of the president and all of that. That those are few that the president have not really worked with the people he wants to work with, those who probably were there with him in what he did in Lagos and all of that. Even those who supported him in the last elections. I mean, in a way, they are really having a concern about those. Some said the cabal in Tinubu government is more than the cabal in Buhari's government. So all of that goes to
very clearly so.
I mean, all of that goes to the situation about who are those really given and working with the president to deliver on all of these matters, because the president can't be everywhere. The reason I'm asking that question is because Mr. Peter Obi, the former presidential candidate of Labour Party, said the president should take a walk around the state on the road to know and feel the pulse of Nigeria. What are those that have cancer? The president can't do all of that. He has appointed ministers, he has appointees in all of this area to help him do the job. Do you feel that those who are appointed to do the job are disconnected from the reality on ground, just as the president has always been admitting?
Michael, I'm not a money bag, but I'm going to tell you something that will go to the soul of the discussion we're having today. The last 3 weeks have been very turbulent and troubling for me. The reasons are that Nigerians, so many people, when they see you on TV, they assume that you're doing so well. So the whole of the last 2 weeks of December were demands from everywhere. You see Nigerians asking for 2,000, 3,000, 5,000. Michael, you have tears in your eyes. You see Nigerians die from stampede. You have tears in your eyes. Stampede for what? In search of food. And then you listen to people who should tell Mr. President the truth, try to gaslight every one of us. Now, I want to tell you that there is nowhere in the world where economies have been brought out of the nadir, out of poverty, to promise through widening of the tax net. Nowhere in the world. There is nowhere in the world where economies have taxed their nations to prosperity. Nowhere. What you do is reduce the tax burden, store and increase productivity. Are you following me? Now, what they did in Lagos between 1999 and 2007 was tax, alpha, beta, tax the people. And Lagos, as it were, and I say this without fear of querulous critics, Lagos can run on autopilot. Lagos has enough resources, but the nation cannot run on autopilot. And so when those who superintended an economy that, as it were, could run, Lagos is about one of the largest economies in Africa, Lagos state alone. And so when they make a lot of mistakes when they assume that Nigeria can run that way, you must understand that the nation Nigeria is bigger than one unit. You must understand that the economic policies that perhaps work in Lagos may not work for the whole of the country. And you also have to interrogate the policies of government. And what I'm saying to Mr. President and to the minders of the president is that what you're doing in the name of reforms can't fix Nigeria. What you're doing floating the naira will not revive our economy. And what you're doing with all sense of respect, thinking of widening the tax net will increase poverty and make people distrust the government. And when you have these denominators, you're in trouble. For those who are telling me, and I think largely voodoo economists, who are telling us that 2025 will be better than 2024, based on the parameters that we have, are not being true and fair to Mr. President. A lot can be done differently.
Oil price is already dropping, and that probably are attributing to that.
No.
1,100 to over 980 naira.
What is the actual cost of a liter of fuel?
Determined by the foreign exchange.
What is the actual cost of a price of fuel if you have to buy crude in naira? You know, there's a lot of, you see, that's exactly why my late dad taught me something before he passed on in 2003. And I'm going to tell you this. Assess every government policies we did. My dad told me something in 2002, and that's the tragedy of government. When they faced me, we were in trouble because I was taught by a thinker. My dad asked me, if you were to give, this was in 2002, he died in 2003, if you were to give a man 2 million naira to furnish a bedroom for you, then, and he makes you a fantastic bedroom, would you come applauding him? And I said to my dad, yes. He said, why? What is the actual cost of the TV, the beds, and the beddings, and the rugs? And when I put the figures together, I was shocked. I told my dad I'll ask him to give me back the remaining of my monies. My dad said, always a sex leadership from that prism. Don't allow people gaslight you. And then now, if you bring that yardstick to what is happening today, what would you say? I see governors who are paying monies to show us the flagging off of a road. What's their job? I see governors who are taking adverts to tell us that they're paying salaries. What's their job? I see every day adverts on TV about a man who is doing his job and incurring more cost in an economy that is barely bed-tested and things are not working. I think there's the need for thinkers and fixers to emerge on the Nigerian political kaleidoscope. We must begin to ask leaders questions. You know, when I hear people say they're going to bring down inflation to 15%, I ask how? Tell me how. And let's interrogate the hows. When I hear that militancy, banditry, and insurgency is being contained, I say, give me the figures. Let's interrogate the figures. When I hear that the value of the naira will increase, like they said about 2 weeks ago, do you know the value today? These are realistic indices. And I told somebody, naturally, since I was 18, I know that between the last 2 weeks of the year, when Nigerians returned from the diaspora, because there's a lot of dollars in Nigeria, our naira will increase, improve. And then when they're going back, the true value of the naira will come back again. And I think that Cardozo knows that truth. I also think that Yemi Edu, the Minister of Finance, knows that truth. We should stop lying to the Nigerian people and face realities. And if we do, as a people, work at making Nigeria work, making Nigeria great, I tell you Nigeria will be great. I am not one of those who are pessimistic about the ability of government to make Nigeria work. I have a problem with falsehood as an act of state. I believe that if Nigerian leaders commit themselves to making this country great, we have potentially the greatest country in Africa.
Right. The president has recently tasked state governors in a bid for subnationals to also key in line with all of that. You feel that let's begin to take some of these development to the grassroots.
Beautiful.
Supreme Court get ruling on local government autonomy. I mean, questioning the state to conduct local government elections, to have local government elected chairman, to see how they can tackle all of the problems from the grassroots. Because it looks that most of the times our attention is always on the center. We are not questioning what the state governors are doing. Concern and focus is not what is happening within the local government, because these are where the problems of this country can well be addressed to. government will tell you they have increased allocation to states, and for that reason, states should be productive, states should be involved in agriculture, states should be involved in security and all of those matters. Because all of this is what can make the country work. What is your view about the state of subnational today?
Michael, you're clairvoyant. I'm impressed with your line of thought. I don't always do this, but I am impressed. Let me tell you something. With the subnationals, I've wondered why the governors haven't come to say, oh yes, in terms of figures, we'll get more money, but in actual sense of value of those monies will get less. I expect governors to be true to what they say on paper. That's point number one. And then point number two, has the federal government stopped receiving more than the whole 36 states and 774 local governments put together? The answer is no. The federal government still gets over 50% of monthly allocations. So if they still do, why will the president sit them down at the end of the year to tell them you have to do more because you get more money? Do they actually get more money? You know, I am glad today that TUC, that's Trade Union Congress, and the NLC, Nigerian Labour Congress, are looking up to say that they will have to make more demands regarding the minimum wage. Because the truth is that 30,000 minimum wage 2 years ago is much more than 85,000 minimum wage, taking Lagos and Rivers State, for instance, today. That's point number one. And you see, Michael, I swore upon the altar of my God to always tell the truth, no matter whose oath is God. And I want to say before Nigerians that we should stop gaslighting the people. We should stop telling half-truths. The truth is, the state governments may be receiving more monies today, but in actual value, they're not receiving more money with the inflationary trend. Now, let me get to the second leg of your question. What must we do about security? I expect, Mr. President, who championed the ideas for true fiscal federalism and devolution of power, to go to the National Assembly and ensure that our monstrous and humongous exclusive legislative list is broken down by legislation to ensure that states control more responsibilities and have more resources. I expect him to ensure that there's devolution of power, and this rent-seeking and rent-taking republic is restructured to have a truly federal system where the states will control their resources. When they do that, and I'm going to tell you, it's more like a silver bullet. When the states control their resources, they'll be able to fund the police, the state regional police. When they control their resources, they'll be able to attend issues of national security, internal security, because all over the world, the police controls internal security. You know, but what we have is an aberration. What we have is a breach. And if we must make our country great, if we must make Nigeria work, we must reorder. Some don't like the word restructure. That's why I'm using the word reorder. We must reevaluate. We must rework the basis of our federalism. You cannot have local governments like beggarly appendages of the center, state governments that are best beggarly appendages of the center. Every month they come to Abuja for fact and think that Nigeria will work. The truth is, with what we have, which is largely dysfunctional, Nigeria will not work. So I think that the first challenge, if Mr. President truly wants to take Nigeria out of the poverty bracket, because we're the leading nation in terms of poverty, and this shouldn't be. This is potentially God's greatest nation. And so if we want to return Nigeria to its leading status, what we must do is structure this federalism and ensure that the local government are powerful and they control their resources, and they give a part of the resources to the state government and then a part to the federal government. Not this system where the federal government is like the headmaster and runs the states like beggarly appendages, and this local government like tiny part of the federalism. It doesn't work anywhere. It hasn't worked anywhere. And so I think that Mr. President, by reason of his orientation, should lead this country to a new republic where we have true federalism, true fiscal federalism, and devolution of power. If he does that, I tell you, Michael, Bola Ahmed Tinubu will enter the history books as one of the greatest presidents that we've ever had.
Let me take you to a political issue, because there are those that really have a concern about how the opposition are engaging the government of the day. They said that is a divided voices, lone voices, just speaking randomly, because as long as the civil society has a role to play, even all the media has a role to play. For instance, 2012, when you went out to Lagos, also made a protest against Goodluck Jonathan, it was more of a political engagement with the civil society as well.
Love for nation. For me, it was love for nation.
Love for the nation as well. But you know what? The political parties are just after the next election, and that those that are really having a concern, it looks that the ruling party are just having their words. Their policies are seamlessly taking on measures and reforms and all of that. How would you describe the current state of the political parties?
Michael, you're very right when you... It was one great sage who said that for statesmen it is about the nation, for politicians it is about the next election. And largely when we rose up against Jonathan, we thought, some of us perhaps naively, thought that the political class was in tandem with our quest for a new Nigeria, in tandem with our quest for a country that works for all. And no sooner had Jonathan lost the election than the Buhari administration that was preaching change told Nigerians that the change should begin with us. And it was when Lai Mohammed started that mantra that I rose up against that same government that I say with all sorts of respect, I headed one of the arms of Buhari's campaign. And in less than 2 years of that campaign, I was the DG Change Ambassadors of Nigeria. I rose up against, I said, this wasn't what we told Nigerians. We told Nigerians that we were going to bring change. We didn't tell them that it was going to be the change. Leadership shows direction. Now, with respect to what we have, very sadly, Nigeria is drifting to a one-party state. Very sadly, the APC has a predilection for state capture. Very sadly, this present government is involved in politics and politics rather than governance and leadership. Very sadly, save and accept the masses, the media, the masses, the civil society, and the opposition unites, we will have a very terrible trajectory, a very terrible situation to deal with in the next few months. But I want to say that, and this truly is one of the greatest words that I've ever read. It was a great American writer. He wrote a poem in 1809, in 1849, The Present Crisis. And he did say, he said, truth forever on the scaffold, falsehood forever on the throne. That same truth shows the future, for behind the doom of the darkness unknown standeth God behind the shadow, keeping watch above his own. And that truth will prevail, and that's why we have a lot of disputations in our country today. I think that God did not bless our country so much to leave us in poverty. And I also think that we're not so intelligent to continue in darkness. I believe that those who are the minders of the presidency must understand that reality. Michael, the depth of your question, the depth of your political analysis, and the depth of what the media is doing is enough for Mr. President to call his minders to order and tell the Nigerians are smarter than what you think. You cannot continue to tell us in vacuum that 2025 will be better than 2024 without giving us practical parameters. You cannot continue to tell us that from nowhere Nigeria will be able to have about 2 million barrels of crude oil per day when the whole of 2024 we did not make that much. I think that Nigerians are interested in very verifiable issues. You know, we just joked about an indices. They said the Port Harcourt refinery is back on track, that the Warri refinery is back on track. That's what they say today. The next hour you hear, oh, the Port Harcourt refinery cannot give you PMS because they don't have NAFTA. The next hour you hear that Warri refinery does not have enough crude, so they can't give you PMS. And the whole back and forth, half-truths, perfidy, mendacity, and debauchery. And then you ask yourself, what are we headed to as a nation? And I want to say, Michael, here, you will be surprised that I say this. So many of us want Mr. President to succeed. So many of us want his ministers to succeed. So many of us want this presidency to do well. And that is why we will continue to say the truth and challenge them to responsible and responsible action. And I hope that they rise to the urgency of now. I hope that they listen to the media. I hope they understand that Niccolo Machiavelli, in his book The Prince, was not hallucinating when he warned the prince about court jesters. He was not hallucinating when he warned the prince about sycophants. He was not hallucinating when he warned the prince about praise singers. If you want to succeed, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, interrogate the figures. If you want to succeed, ask questions. If you want to succeed, go and read about the leadership secrets of Abraham Lincoln, who made his fiercest critic his personal secretary of war. You know, the only way to emerge as the man who ruptures every old foundation is to learn to listen to those who assumedly are not your friends, because they will tell you the truth and they will make your presidency successful. I hope that Nigerians will understand that opposition is a pristine street to the city called brotherhood. Critical thought is a pristine boulevard to that beautiful country that you and I want. I hope that this leadership understands that we can all work together if we are truly sincere and we truly make the success of our country and our unalterable commitment. Michael, I tell you, I don't have doubts about the success of our country. I have doubts about the commitment of leadership to making our country truly great.
And that's the reason why we are engaging on this
That's right.
conversation to move forward. Professor Chris Nwabuda is a convener of Country First Movement, giving us some thought-provoking concern about how we can move the nation forward from where it is to there. Our government projection for 2025 isn't just rhetoric. They need more commitment from the leaders at all levels to see how they can address all of these issues. Thanks so much, Professor, for joining us on the show tonight. We do hope to have you again to dissect on all these issues.
The pleasure of mine.
I think the next time we should have, we'll see some developments and results at the end of the day.
I pray, and God bless our country.
Thank you so much. And you know, I'm only looking for tangible support, and I'm not asking too much. Government should begin to walk the talk and no more talk. That's the size of our conversation tonight on Big Talk. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us and tuning in. My name is Nick Michael. See you again.